Welcome, my weird witches. You've found Raven's Lorecast, where folklore, fire, and a little fierce honesty all meet in the same cauldron. I'm Raven Lorekeeper, storyteller, witch, and your unapologetic guide through myth, magic, and all the places the world told you not to wander. This podcast exists because magic deserves to be honest, witchcraft deserves to be inclusive, and every one of us who grew up other deserves a place to finally exhale. So pour yourself something comforting, settle in, and remember, the world may not have been built for us, but the magic was. Weird ones, come in. Close the door behind you. We don't need the cold slipping in before we're ready for it. Sit with me by the fire for a moment. Let your shoulders fall. Let your jaw unclench. Let whatever you carried through the day melt like frost on a warm mug. Tonight is different. Tonight is sacred. Tonight begins the first of our Sabbat deep dives, the start of a cycle that stretches across continents, cultures, and thousands of years. A cycle that teaches us how humans everywhere found their way through the seasons and how the seasons shaped them in return. But before we step into the longest night of the year, you need to know something about where you're sitting, because this room, this fire, this home you keep hearing about in passing, it isn't just a cozy nook where I curl up with tea and a stack of reference books. This place has a name, an ancient one. Madhya Pathika, the traveler that walks the space between. Now, I'm not going to dump the full story on you. That comes later. Piece by piece, Sabbat by Sabbat. But here's the part you do need to know tonight. I don't travel the world to bring you these stories. The world comes to me. Madhya Pathika is older than any map. Older than the borders empires carved into the land. Older than the idea that knowledge belongs to one people and not another. The Manor isn't a house the way you're thinking. She's a being, a presence, a guardian with opinions, moods, and an alarming vendetta against my toaster. And every so often, especially as we approach a Sabbat, she shifts, subtly, decisively, like the universe taking a breath. Sometimes the window shows a forest that wasn't there yesterday. Sometimes the wind smells of desert salt or tropical fruit blossoms. Sometimes a familiar you haven't met yet pads quietly down the hallway and curls up at my feet like they've always belonged there. I don't force any of it. I don't control it. And for the love of all that is holy and unholy, I most certainly do not predict it. Madhya Pathika takes me where the stories need to be told, where the ancestors are ready to speak, where the land remembers something it wants me to remember too. And tonight, weird ones, she brought us north, far north, to a place where winter is honest, the night is endless, and the sky glows with the breath of the ancestors. A place where the people don't fear the dark, they understand it. A place where the aurora dances like living memory, and everything carries story. But before we go any further, let me be perfectly clear. This is not myth for entertainment. This is not mix and match spirituality. This is not Raven's fantasy winter. This is real culture, real tradition, real ancestral lineage from the indigenous peoples of the Arctic and the historic folkways of the Norse and Scandinavian North. And it is my job, my responsibility, to honor these stories with accuracy, reverence, and the deep respect they are owed. But I'll tell you this much. You don't need to know the entire canon of Madhya Pathika tonight. You don't need to memorize the name, though she'll be delighted if you do. You don't need to understand how a house can travel without moving. You just need to know that when the room shifts, when the world outside the windows changes, when new stories begin to stir in the library like wind passing over old pages, it means the ancestors are ready, and so am I. Tonight, we begin with Yule, the Arctic and Scandinavian midwinter, the longest night, the hearthfire festival that has more depth and variation than empire ever bothered to remember. You'll hear me speak names like Sámi, Inuit, Yupik, Iñupiat, Kalaallit, Yule, the Old Norse Yule, and Sunna, the sun goddess. And I will give every one of those names the reverence they deserve, because the cultures of the Arctic have survived what many could not. And the people of the Old North have stories that shaped half the world without ever asking for credit. So settle deeper into your chair, pull the blanket up around you, let the firelight soften the edges of the room, because the world outside the manor has already shifted. The aurora is moving, the snow is quiet, and something just scratched at the back door. The longest night is calling. Let's answer it together. Weird ones, the manor has fully settled now. Listen. Hear how the walls creak differently, how the air tastes sharper, cleaner, touched by ice and something ancient. Look at the windows, frost feathering outward like wings, the aurora painting the night sky in green fire. Welcome to Yule. Not the watered-down, cinnamon-scented version that Empire sold back to the world. Not the sanitized holiday card where winter lasts a week and the night ends politely by 6 a.m. No. Now about that scratching we heard earlier. The manor's back door has opened, quietly, as if someone very small and very certain has let themselves in. An Arctic fox steps across the threshold, white fur glowing like fresh snow under moonlight, eyes bright as ice catching starlight. Not a pet, not a familiar in the spellcraft sense, not something to claim or own or aestheticize. A spirit of place, a teacher, a watcher. Some Arctic cultures see the fox as a messenger between humans and the land. Others say foxes carry laughter across the snow. Still others speak of foxes as tricksters, not malicious, but clever, reminding humans that survival requires wit as much as strength. The fox pads into the reading nook, sits, cocks its head, looks at you, looks at me. And in that moment there is a knowing. I understand the stories I am allowed to tell. I understand the stories that are not mine to touch. And I understand that the land, in all its brilliance and brutality, is listening. Tonight, we step into the real North, the Arctic North, the Old Norse North, the Sámi, the Inuit, the Yupik, the Iñupiat, the Kalaallit, and the Norse and Icelandic peoples whose stories braided into this season like fire and frost entwined. All different, all sovereign, all luminous, and all of them teaching the same unstoppable truth. Humans who live with winter do not fear the dark. They know it intimately. They honor it. They build life alongside it. In the Arctic Circle, the longest night isn't a single evening. It's 6 weeks. 6 weeks where the sun never rises. 6 weeks where the sky glows midnight blue at noon. 6 weeks where the world lives on starlight, firelight, and the shimmering breath of the ancestors moving across the sky, the aurora borealis. To the Inuit and many other Arctic peoples, the aurora is not a light show. It is presence. It is spirit. It is those who came before, the ones who love you still, dancing above the world. Some say the lights are the spirits playing a game with a walrus skull. Some say they are guides for travelers in the dark. Some say they are messages, omens, reminders that death is not an ending, but a doorway. Whatever the story, the truth is the same. Up here, the aurora never betrays the dark. They belong to each other. And Yule is the moment when that belonging becomes celebration. Let's start with the Sámi, the indigenous people of Sápmi, whose homelands stretch across Norway, Sweden, Finland, and the Kola Peninsula. In Sámi tradition, winter holds sovereignty. It has a soul, a will, a temperament. And during the dark season, that spirit moves. You'll hear the old stories speak of Bavi, the sun goddess, whose return is coaxed with butter smoothed onto doorposts, symbolizing nourishment after famine light. The reindeer mother, not a single deity, but a vast spiritual force who births the herds, protects migrations, and embodies survival through relationship. Noidi, Sámi shamans who traveled between worlds with drum, chant, and trance, calling upon ancestors and land spirits for healing, guidance, and balance. Yule in Sámi lands wasn't about banishing the dark. It was about working with it, honoring it, listening to it, calling the sun back gently, not demanding its return. Because wisdom comes in the quiet, and in 6 weeks of night, there is a lot of quiet. Among the Inuit, Yupik, Iñupiat, and Kalaallit, winter is not an adversary. Winter is the teacher. Winter is the sculptor. Winter is the reason humans learn to thrive in a world empire has historically pretended was uninhabitable. Let me tell you a story. Not a full recitation. Those belong to the peoples who carry them. But a glimpse, the kind we are allowed to share. There is a tale of Sedna among many Inuit communities, a goddess whose story is vast, painful, powerful, and deeply tied to the ocean. She is not a simple sea goddess. She is the force who governs marine life because she became part of the sea through betrayal. And during the dark season, when traveling across frozen water becomes possible, offerings were made to soothe her, honor her, maintain right relationship with the beings below the ice. The Arctic peoples understood something Empire still hasn't. Relationship is sustenance. Respect is survival. Reciprocity is the oldest magic we know. Another story, found in various northern cultures, speaks of Kalaallit, the drum, the heartbeat of winter gatherings, where stories were told, songs were sung, and communities became the light that replaced the missing sun. This was Yule long before the word Yule was spoken. Now we shift, not south, but sideways in time, to the Old Norse, the Icelanders, the Nordic people whose stories of Yule, Jol, became the bones of what Empire would later rewrite as Christmas. But originally, Yule was wild, Yule was ancestral, Yule was liminal, Yule was the hinge between worlds. This was the season of the wild hunt. Spectral riders traveling the winter sky, led in some regions by Odin, in others by goddesses and land spirits erased by later Christianization. Suna, the sun goddess, whose strength was celebrated as she began her slow, sacred return. Frigg and Freya, goddesses whose magic, prophecy, and protection were essential to midwinter survival. The Jólablót, the Yule sacrifice feast, offered in gratitude, not fear. The hearth, the oldest altar in the world. And here's the truth. Yule in the north wasn't about light triumphing over dark. It was about honoring the dark as a place of gestation, magic, and ancestral presence. The returning light wasn't victory. It was partnership restored. This is where the magic hits you in the ribs. The Sámi, the Inuit, the Yupik, the Iñupiat, the Kalaallit, the Icelanders, the Norse. Cultures separated by oceans, by languages, by histories, by worldviews, and yet, when you look at their midwinter traditions side by side, what do you see? Fire as a living presence, darkness as sacred, the return of the sun as a ceremony, not a conquest, ancestor veneration woven into daily life, animals as spiritual kin, the sky as a message board, the world between worlds opening at midwinter. Humans have always reached for the same truths. Empire taught you we were different. The winter proves we are not. So what then is Yule? Not the Empire version, not the commercial version, not the one with jingling bells and plastic snowflakes. What is Yule in truth? Yule is the season where humans remember they belong to something older than fear. We belong to the dark. We belong to the light. We belong to the land. We belong to our dead. We belong to the animals who shared this world with us. We belong to the cycles that existed long before Empire and will exist long after it. Yule is the threshold, the start of the wheel of the year. The wheel of the year is a map of the seasons, a way of tracking how light, land, and life move through birth, growth, fullness, decline, and rest. It reminds us that change is not failure. It's the rhythm everything alive must follow. The moment the world breathes in and asks you, what will you carry into the light? And what will you let dissolve into the dark? Because everything begins again in the winter. Everything, even you. All right, weird ones. Now we step outside. Not to escape the dark, but to meet it honestly. Because the sky over us on the winter solstice does not glitter for comfort. It doesn't promise rescue. It does not dazzle. It endures. And that matters, especially tonight. This episode drops on December 21st, 2025. The true winter solstice in the Northern Hemisphere. The longest night. The deepest dark. The hinge point of the year where the sun stops falling and begins almost imperceptibly to climb again. Not dramatically, not triumphantly, quietly. And the sky reflects that truth with brutal clarity. At 9:03 a.m. Central Time, the sun crossed into Capricorn, marking the winter solstice. Capricorn is not a sign of celebration. It is a sign of survival. It governs bone, spine, teeth, the structures that remain when everything soft has been stripped away. Capricorn is the mountain that does not move when the storm howls, the long climb, the patience that does not require hope to function. This is why Yule belongs here, in the north, in the cold, in the dark. Because the light does not return because we believed hard enough. It returns because the earth kept turning. Capricorn teaches that sacred truth without romance. You endure first, meaning comes later. Tonight, the moon is a waxing crescent, only a few % illuminated, barely more than a breath of light clinging to the sky. She is newly reborn, but fragile. This is not a moon that floods the night with reassurance. She is in Capricorn, traveling astronomically through Sagittarius, a liminal placement that matters deeply. Emotionally, this moon does not ask you how you feel. She asks how you are standing. Capricorn moons teach restraint, containment, the wisdom of not spilling everything just because you can. This is the moon of holding the ember steady, protecting the flame from the wind, choosing structure over collapse. In the Arctic, this moon would barely rise, a sliver above the horizon, a reminder rather than a guide. And that's the lesson. You do not need a blazing sky to survive the night. You need one reliable point of light. Mars, the planet of action and drive, is also in Capricorn tonight, close to the sun, difficult to see, but powerfully placed. Mars in Capricorn does not rush. It does not flare. It endures. This is disciplined fire, the kind that keeps hands working even when morale is gone, the kind that splits wood, mends nets, feeds families, and does not require applause. This is survival magic, the magic of continuing. If you feel tired tonight, not emotionally dramatic, but bone-deep weary, this sky says, that makes sense. And still, you're here. High in the night sky, bright and impossible to ignore, is Jupiter in Cancer, moving retrograde. This is one of the most important placements of the night. Cancer rules home, memory, lineage, the hearth. Jupiter expands whatever it touches, and in Cancer, it expands ancestral memory. This is the sky of elders telling stories in the dark, hands repeating motions learned generations ago, survival knowledge passed quietly, not written down. Under this Jupiter, the ancestors are close. In Arctic cultures, this is the sky that reminds you, you are not the first to endure this night. You are not alone in it. Low and subtle, but deeply influential, Saturn and Neptune remain in Pisces. This pairing is not about certainty. It is about faith without proof. Pisces governs the unseen, the spiritual, the intuitive. Saturn brings structure. Neptune dissolves illusion. Together, they teach, hold what you cannot yet understand, trust without fantasy, pray without bargaining. This is the spirituality of the Arctic. No promises, no guarantees, only relationship with the forces that are larger than you. And then, quietly, almost as an afterthought, the Ursid meteor shower peaks. These meteors radiate from Ursa Minor, near the North Star, the axis of the sky. They are not flashy. They do not rain down in abundance, but they appear in the darkest nights of the year. That matters, because the Ursids are the sky saying, even now, especially now, sparks exist. Not enough to banish the dark, enough to remind you that motion continues. Above the Arctic, the winter constellations hold steady. Orion, the Watcher, mid-stride, eternal. Taurus, endurance, food, strength. Gemini, duality held, not resolved. Ursa Major and Minor, the great and little bears circling the pole. These stars do not rush. They do not flicker. They keep position. This is not a casting sky. It is a holding sky. And that is the deepest Yule truth. Before humans celebrated light returning, we survived the dark together. You might be asking what this sky is asking of you. So let me say this plainly. This sky is not asking you to manifest. It is not asking you to shine. It is not asking you to heal everything tonight. It is asking you to remain, to keep the ember alive, to protect what matters, to trust that turning continues even when you cannot feel it yet. This is the sky of the Arctic Yule. Not triumph, not escape, endurance, memory, the quiet certainty that dawn is coming, because it always has. And when the light returns, you will still be here to meet it. Come in, witch. Close the door. Shake the Arctic cold out of your bones. Tonight, the longest night of the year has wrapped the north in the great dark cloak. The world outside goes still. Breath becomes visible, and something ancient inside you remembers. You survive winter by feeding your fire. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, literally. This is the heart of Yule's kitchen witchery. Yule food is not about indulgence or decadence. Yule food is medicine. Yule food is memory. Yule food is the ritual of keeping your flame alive when the sun won't do it for you. So tonight, in our Arctic Circle altar of standing stones and aurora-drenched sky, we're building a vigil feast. 2 dishes, 2 energies, 2 spells woven into one story. One holds you through the dark. The other whispers that dawn is coming. But before we cook, come closer to the hearth. This is where the real magic lives. Not in old grimoires, not in frost patterns on the glass, but right here, in the warmth of your kitchen and the work of your hands. For this Sabbat, for this longest night, we are preparing the triple squash hearth bowl. Dense, grounding, earthy, winter endurance in edible form. And pumpkin mousse with honey and spices. Soft, bright, sun-kissed. The first sweetness, the promise of return. 1 oven, 1 fire, 2 spells. Let me tell you why this meal matters at Yule. Before grocery stores and unlimited milk alternatives, our ancestors, everywhere on this spinning blue rock, survived winter through foods that kept well, cured well, or persisted in the cold. And squashes, they were treasure. Literal survival treasure. Indigenous peoples of North America cultivated and stored squash for thousands of years. A winter lifeline, a community safeguard, a sacred inheritance. Across the Old World, the Mediterranean, Northern Europe, the Arctic fringe, winter gourds filled the same role. Humble, sturdy, life-saving. Today, we grab a squash at the store like it's nothing. But it is something. It is an inheritance. It is continuity. It is a reminder that someone survived winter so you could stand here now, stirring a pot in your warm home. Tonight we honor that. And we do it by choosing the path that feels right for you. Acorn squash, butternut, pumpkin. Yes, yes, and also yes. Roasting them together isn't just practical, it's symbolic. It's abundance. It's solstice spellwork in the language of fire. Here is the spellwork representation of the 3 squashes. Acorn is the heart. Soft, sweet, gentle. The emotional center of the dish. This is the squash that whispers, "Rest, love. It's cold, but you're safe." Butternut is the body, rich, grounding, steady. The backbone of the bowl. This is hearth magic, nourishing, stabilizing, protective. And pumpkin, the spirit, bright, golden, solar energy made edible. Even on the longest night, pumpkin carries the memory of the sun. When you roast all 3 together, your kitchen becomes an altar, and the heat of your oven becomes a little winter solstice bonfire, a fire on snow. On this night, the deepest dark, the farthest cold, we make 2 dishes because Yule itself is dual magic, endurance and sweetness, survival and joy, fire and return. The hearth bowl holds you through the night. The mousse reminds you that light is already turning toward you. This is kitchen witchery at Yule. Feed your fire, feed your body, feed your hope. Now come closer. The vigil feast begins. Set your oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, a confident fire-forging heat. Hearth warm, solstice warm. Gather for the roast and soup. 1 acorn squash, 1 butternut squash, 1 small sugar pumpkin, 2 to 3 tablespoons of olive oil, 1 to 1.5 teaspoons of salt, a half to 1 teaspoon black pepper, 1 to 2 teaspoons dried thyme. Fresh sage is optional, but utterly divine. 1 whole garlic bulb, 1 medium yellow onion diced and lightly sautéed, 4 to 6 cups of vegetable broth, 1 cup coconut cream, or half and half if not dairy-free. For the mousse, 1 1/2 to 2 cups of roasted pumpkin from above, 3/4 cup coconut cream, very cold, the thick part only, 3 to 4 tablespoons confectioner's sugar, or 2 to 3 tablespoons maple syrup, 1/2 teaspoon cinnamon, 1/4 teaspoon nutmeg, 1/8 teaspoon clove, 1/2 to 1 teaspoon vanilla extract, a pinch of salt. Trust me, it wakes everything up. And a baking sheet lined with parchment, your winter altar. Now to prepare the squash. Cut each squash in half, and absolutely no sacrificing fingertips, the crone insists. Scoop the seeds like you're cleaning snow from a sacred path. Drizzle the cut sides with olive oil. Dust the butternut and acorn squash with salt, pepper, and thyme. Lay a leaf of sage across each of these two if you want that evergreen whisper. Place cut side down. The garlic. Slice off the top. Drizzle with oil. Wrap in foil like a tiny solstice gift. Place into any oven-safe container and put on the top rack of your preheated oven. Slide the squash tray into the bottom rack of the oven. This is your moment of intention. Solstice magic always begins with fire and patience. Roast for 45 to 60 minutes, depending on the size. You'll smell when they're ready. The air turns golden and ancient. When the roasting is done, let everything cool slightly. Scoop the squash into a large pot, but save 1.5 to 2 cups of pumpkin for the mousse. The flavor becomes dimensional, like winter learned to speak. Add to the pot all the roasted garlic, squeeze it like holy paste, the sautéed onion, 4 to 6 cups vegetable broth. I say start with 4, then add more as needed. Additional salt and pepper to taste. Additional thyme to taste. Simmer everything for 20 to 25 minutes. Blend until smooth with an immersion blender, or you can do batches in a standing blender. Taste, adjust, let the soup tell you what it needs. This is witchcraft, listening. Now for the sweetness, the returning light. In a chilled bowl, whip the chilled and solidified portion of coconut cream first until fluffy. This is the key to lifting the mousse. Combine in a food processor 1.5 to 2 cups roasted pumpkin, 3 to 4 tablespoons confectioner's sugar, or 2 to 3 tablespoons maple syrup, half teaspoon cinnamon, 1/4 teaspoon nutmeg, 1/8 teaspoon clove, 1/2 to 1 teaspoon vanilla, and that pinch of salt. Fold this into the fluffy cream. Taste. If it needs more sweetness, add 1 tablespoon at a time, but don't drown it. This dessert is meant to be the return of the sun, not the weight of autumn. Whip or fold until silky. Chill for a firmer mousse. Enjoy warm for a winter custard moment. Either way, it's divine. This is not just cooking. This is a winter invocation. Acorn squash represents the heart, gentleness, emotional warmth. Butternut is the body, endurance, grounding. Pumpkin, the spirit, sun, joy, and return. Roasting is transformation through fire. Soup is survival and nourishment. And mousse, sweetness returning to the world. Your kitchen becomes an altar. Your oven becomes a fire pit. Your hands become the hands of every ancestor who ever said, "The light will return, we will get through this night together." And now, you're a part of that. When you sit with these dishes, whether you're alone tonight, gathered with family, wrapped in the laughter of your coven, or simply keeping company with the ghosts of your own past winters, let them speak to you. Let them remind you, you have survived every winter you've ever known. You will survive this one too. Honor the nights you didn't think you'd make it through. Honor the strength you grew without ever asking for it. Honor the softness returning to you now, slowly, tenderly, the way dawn returns to the Arctic, slowly, tenderly, the way dawn returns to the Arctic sky, one breath at a time. Eat slowly. Taste everything. Let the hearth bowl root you in endurance. Let the mousse lift you with sweetness. Let both remind you that your fire has never gone out, not once, no matter how dark the night or how long the cold. Because this is the vigil feast, witch. This is solstice medicine. This is the nourishment that keeps your ember alive until the sun finds its way home. Before you take your first bite, pause. Feel the bowl warming your hands. Feel the light rising from the soup. Feel the sweetness waiting to meet you. And whisper to yourself, light returns through me. Because it does. Every solstice. Every year. Every time you choose to warm your own spirit instead of abandoning it to the cold. You are part of an ancient lineage of people who kept vigil through the long night. Not by fear, but by fire, by food, by faith in the dawn. And when the light returns, because it always returns, you will rise with it. Now, my bright ones, step with me into the convocation. The night is not over, but neither are you. Weird ones, breathe with me. Look around this manor. Madhya Pathika, the traveler that walks the space between. And notice how she's settled again. She does that after a telling. After the wind of a people's memory moves through her halls. After you and I open our chests wide enough to let something ancient walk in. If you've been with me since episode 1, you felt it tonight. The moment the aurora touched the windows and the walls of the manor changed their shape to honor the land beneath her. It happens every time a Sabbat opens. This place, this cosmic house, isn't a backdrop. It's a companion, a witness, a recorder of secrets entrusted across generations. And tonight she is filled, floor to roof beam, with the breath of the Arctic peoples and the Nordic ancestors who have watched over Yule for thousands upon thousands of winters. You may have heard her creak when the stories reached their deepest point. That wasn't settling. That was remembering. And did you feel it too? The little scratch at the door? That wasn't the wind, sweetheart. That was the fox, the Arctic fox, the keeper of snow secrets, the one whose paws press messages into the ice. He came to check on us, to make sure the tale was told truthfully, respectfully, with the care that every ancestor deserves. Even now, if you close your eyes, you can feel him curled up by the manor's hearth, a flicker of white fur and firelight, breathing in rhythm with the last sparks of Yule. Because this is the beauty of the Sabbats Across the Globe canon. When we honor a people, the land hears us, the animals hear us, the ancestors hear us, and the story walks in like an invited guest. Tonight's lore was only the doorway, weird ones, the beginning of the beginning. There are stories from the Kalaallit, from the Sámi, from the Inuit, from the Norse coastlines where the aurora feels like a river of souls. Stories so deep, so old, so fiercely tended that they deserve more time, more space, more breath than a single Sabbat can hold. Which is why, after the holiday season, and once I have gotten caught up on everything, a full bonus lore episode drops. Not commentary, not summaries, not pan-cultural mashups, but one story from each people we are allowed to share, fully told, fully honored, with correct pronunciations, proper boundaries, and the humility required when you walk into someone else's ancestral house. 4 stories, 4 worlds. Because the keeper of the lore doesn't flinch from truth. She doesn't cut corners. She doesn't sanitize. She doesn't collapse specificity into sameness. She follows the code. Honor the people. Honor the land. Honor the ancestors. Honor the story. Always. And when the story is too big to fit in one night's firelight, she makes another fire. So this Yule season, you'll get 2. But before we close this circle for tonight, place your hand on your heart, just like this. Let the last shimmer of aurora wash across your mind's eye. Green, gold, blue, violet. The colors of spirits dancing in the long dark. And hear this. You are not alone in the winter. You are not forgotten in the cold. You are not small beneath the sky that never rises. You belong to a lineage of people who have sung through the night, who have lit fires in the snow, who have remembered joy even when the sun took her long retreat. You were made for this time of year, for the quiet, for the truth-telling, for the spark that glows inside the ribs when everything outside sleeps. The manor feels it. The fox knows it. The ancestors nod their approval. And I, Raven, keeper of the lore, traveler between worlds, fire starter, threshold walker, I see it in you. Yule is not the end of the story. It is the beginning. The turning, the moment the cosmos inhales before the light begins her return. So until we meet again next week, keep your candle lit, keep your heart open, keep your spirit steady in the long dark, and thank you for joining me in the home of wit, wisdom, witchcraft. Thank you, my weird witches, for giving me a little of your time and your beautiful attention today. If this episode stirred something in you, a memory, a spark, a question, a fire, please share it. Spread the word. That's how our circle grows. You can find me on socials at Ravens Lorecast on Facebook, Twitter, and Blue Sky, and at Ravens_lore_cast on Instagram and Threads. And if you've got a question, a story, a spellcraft request, or just the world's cutest familiar photo, email me at raven@ravenslorecast.com. I really do read them. Until next time, keep your fire tended, your humor wicked, and your heart brave and wide open. This is Raven Lorekeeper, signing off with love, grit, and a whisper of magic on your path.